Now, over the last couple of weeks, I've covered the updates to both the free and the pro versions of Elementor and the new theme builder and global styling options. Now today, I'm going to take you through a basic demonstration of how the two parts work in combination to ultimately make designing, building and styling your website and WordPress themes much easier. Now this is only going to scratch the surface of the two sides of the equation, and once the final version of both of these are released, I'll come back and do a full in-depth video demo on how to build a full theme and how to globally style and configure everything in detail. If this is something that you think would be interesting, be sure to hit that subscribe button and smash the bell icon to be notified once that's released. So let's take a quick look at what it is we're starting off with, and then we can go through the process of building our own custom theme. So this is our starting point. We're just using the Elementor Hello theme because it's a bare bones theme that allows us to create pretty much whatever we want. So as you can see, it is literally just a string of post information. And if we click to go in and take a look at one of those posts, it's just basically the blank placeholders that the Hello theme gives us. So what we're going to do is jump over into the editor of Elementor and we're going to take a look at how we start building out these themes. Now let me just say at the time of recording this, we're on Elementor version 3 beta 5, that's for the free version of Elementor, and beta 2 for the pro version. So things may well change by the time the live version comes out. I just wanted to put this together to give you an overview of how the sort of road forward to working with creating themes and global colors and global styles and so on, how that's going to impact the way in which you may design your sites and your themes moving forward using Elementor and Elementor Pro. So like I say, things may change, but I will revisit this later on down the line when the final versions of both of these release, and I'll create a more in-depth tutorial covering every aspect. However, for this one, this is a kind of just an overview. Okay, so let's just jump over first of all and take a look at the settings of Elementor, because you need to make sure you do one thing before you start working with creating global styles and theme styles and so on, theme kits and so on. Make sure you check disable default colors and default fonts. Both of those have to be checked for you to be able to get maximum benefit of how this works. The other thing that I've done, I've got probably a handful of posts inside here. These are just basic placeholder posts. And if we come into the pages section and I come into all pages, I've created a sample content layout. And if I edit that with Elementor, I'll show you where it is. It is simply a case of all the headings, body text, a form, a button, and an image. This is just something that makes life easier when you're creating global styling. And I've used this in previous videos. I will drop a link in the description below so you can grab this for yourself. It's just a simple template file, and you can use this then when you want to set up your global styling. Just makes the whole process super easy to work with. Okay, so let's exit out of this. Let's first of all jump over to the templates and into the theme builder, because this is where the biggest change to Elementor Pro 3.0 has come in, other than the code changes that are apparently going on underneath the hood to make things quicker. So I'm not going to cover that at all. I'll do some tests on that when the final version releases, and we'll do some speed comparisons between the older version of Elementor 2.9-ish or 2.10 and Elementor 3 when it comes out. But what this does is it gives you the key components to create your own basic theme. Your header, your footer, single post template, single page template, archive, search results, and error 404. So in this video, I'm going to quickly create all of these, and I'm going to show you how we can do things like setup, styling, and so on. So with that being said, let's kick things off by creating our header. So we're going to click to add a new header in. And that'll take us over there into the library where we can pick either a predefined layout, or we can go ahead and create something unique from scratch. So let's just do that. Let's just close this down. Let's create something from scratch. We're going to click to add in a simple 2-column section. And on the left-hand side, we're going to drop in the site logo. And on the right-hand side, we're simply going to come back to our widgets and drop in the nav menu. Now, you can't see the logo at the moment because it is white on white. If I change this background color to something else, so we'll just set the style on there and we'll just change this to any old color. Doesn't really matter too much what it is. There you go. You can see what I'm working with now. Okay, so that's all in it. So we'll leave that. We'll take that off in a moment, and I'll show you why we'll take that off later on. So let's just choose our navigation. Let's quickly set that over to the right hand side, and we'll just select this entire top section, come to our layout, and we'll set the vertical align to be middle, so everything is lined up in the middle. And we'll also specify that we want a certain height. So we're going to come into height, we're going to say minimum height, and we're going to set this to something like 90 pixels. 90 pixels. And we're going to come to our logo, and what we're going to do on there is we're going to make that a little smaller. So we're going to come into this area, and we're going to say our max width, we'll change that to pixel values, and we'll set that to something like 130. and pop that over to the left hand side. So we've created our basic header section. Nothing that you haven't seen probably a million times. We'll hit publish and it'll still take us over now to the conditions option, at which point we can set our condition. So entire site is perfectly fine. So we say save and close. That's our first template created, or at least the basic bare bones of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back out of this and we're going to go back into the theme builder, and from there we're going to create our footer. So first of all, before we do, let's just rename this because it doesn't make a lot of sense. We'll just click on it. And this is another thing that I think is incredibly useful with 3.0 of Elementor Pro. It gives us a much better way of working with a preview, exactly what the design is going to work like, telling us that it's active by this little green dot and any other information about it. Also the instances, and you can see in this example, the entire site, and we can edit the conditions directly inside here, and that'll take us through to the conditioned options. So streamlining the whole process, that's pretty cool. I like that. You can come to the top and we can say we want to rename this, and we're going to just change this to default header and change that. There we go. That's added that in. So we'll come over to our footers now and we can click to add a new footer in, and we'll do the same again. We're just simply going to grab a design this time though, and we'll just insert this one. It's not too much of an issue what we're going to do because we can change anything we want later on down the line anyway. So the same, we'll just hit publish, add a condition, and we'll set that to entire site. So we've now created the first two parts of our site, the global header and the global footer. So next up, let's create our next template. Come back to the top left hand corner. From there, we can click on theme builder to go straight to the theme builder, which is a quicker way of doing things. And as you can see, there's our header and our footer. So let's just select our footer a second, and let's just rename that from here, and we'll just call this default footer. There we go. I'll change that. So there's our footer, and everything else is now set up in place. Let's go back to all parts, and you can see we've got both those pieces. So next up, we need to create things like the single post. Now, like I say, this is not about how we create every aspect of it. This is just to give you an overview of how things work, so you can see how much quicker it's going to be to at least get the bare bones structure of a theme built. And then we can do things like setting up all the colors and so on to make the whole tweaking of that so much easier and quicker. So let's do single post. And from there, we'll do the same again. We'll click on either plus next to the single post, or we'll add a new one up here. And the nice thing with this is if you create multiple different layouts inside the same section, in other words, you may have multiple different kind of single post templates, you may have custom post types and those kinds of things, then it'll show all of those underneath the section. So now it's no longer a case of just a name. We're now going to have a thumbnail of what that template looks like. So it does make the whole process really quick and easy. Okay, so let's just find single inside here, single post, and we can just grab one of these. Now, I'm going to do just that. I'm just going to grab any design. I'm not too bothered about it. We'll insert that into here and let that pull in. And there we go. So that's going to have the basic information about it, which, like I say, we can update and change anything we want in there. Don't like that section, so let's get rid of that. Okay, that looks okay. Everything's looking pretty ugly at the moment, but it's more a case of getting the bare bones in place, and then we can flesh the design out. So add a condition for this. All singular is perfectly fine, but if you didn't want that, you can see we can really break this down to a granular level. But none of this has changed. This is exactly the same as you've always seen when it comes to working with the conditions as part of Elementor templates. Let's just save and close that, and there's our section for our single setup. So again, we can come back, go back into our theme builder. Let's create our archive next. So we're going to come into archive, we'll add an archive in there, and we'll do the same thing again. We'll just grab a design. So we'll grab the one that's in keeping, and we'll insert that into our design. Now I'm going to stop at this point, and I'm going to go ahead and show you some of the other things that I wanted to demonstrate. So we'll publish this, set the conditions, and we'll say all archives, save and close. That's perfectly fine. So we'll then take a look at this now, what it looks like on the front end of our site where we've got our own content. Okay, so if we take a look now, we've got a pretty ugly looking design, but the key pieces are in there. If we click on one of the posts, we'll take a look at one of our post layouts. So the key components are there, but obviously there's no continuity of design, no continuity of style or anything like that whatsoever throughout. So how do we rectify those kinds of things? This is where the global styling starts to really open up and make the whole process a lot easier to work with. So let's come back in. There's our key template files. Now we'll come back and take a look at creating the additional ones for the single page and those kinds of things a little later. But for now, we're going to exit out of this. So we're going to come back out and we're going to open up our page that has our styling options on it. So we're going to come into all pages. We're going to open up that sample content with Elementor. And this is where we can start to set up some basic parameters. Okay, so we're going to come to the top left-hand corner of this. And from there, we can come into the user preferences, the site settings, and so on. So if we go into site settings, you can see this is now where we can control all the aspects of the global settings for our site. So global colors, global fonts, typography, those kinds of things. And if you've seen this in the previous beta version of Elementor 3.0 or 2.so, where we've got things like the global styles, this is going to be very familiar to you, but it's going to be a much more refined location to access all those things. So let's take a look first of all at global colors, which is a new feature for part of Elementor 3.0, and this is included in the free version. Now this is where we can set up and assign global colors that we can reference throughout anywhere we can select colors on our site. The benefit of the global colors is that if you wanted to change that color throughout your entire site, you'd simply come back to global colors, and anywhere on your site that references that color will change when you make a change inside the global colors setting. So this is a good place to start off with if you're dealing with branding colors for a particular project, and you may have some extra colors that you're not too sure of. Well, you could drop those inside here and you could reference those and then easily change them without having to go back all through your templates and any widgets you've configured and all those kinds of things. So it is a big time saver. The other thing you'll notice is we've got this button that says add color. We're no longer limited to just 4 colors. If you take a look at the older versions of Elementor, we had sort of global color options inside there, but it was basically pretty limited in what you could do with it. There were a pile of predefined global color sets you could reference. This now just gives you the global colors option that you can set up yourself. Nice thing with this is, even though it says we've got primary, secondary, and text and so on, you can just click inside there and change that to anything you want that makes more sense. And if you want to add extra colors in, you can do just that. So we could just say this is going to be pale gray BG for background, and then we'll just set a color on there that's going to be a very, very pale gray. And there we go. We've now created another custom color that's a globally assignable color. Okay, so when we've got globally assignable colors, how does that work? Well, let's update this first of all. Let me just give you a quick example of how it would work. Let's exit out of this because we still do need to exit out of those sort of theme styles and the settings and so on to be able to make changes to any part of our site. But let's take a look at the header. I want to change this now from this horrible red to the color that I want to use, which is my global branding color of this orange color. So let's just edit the header. We'll just select the top section. And then what we'll do is we'll come into the styles like we normally would. And you can see our colors now where we've got the red set. We've got this little symbol that looks like a globe next to it. And that's exactly what it is. It's a global reference. So it says that whatever we change is going to be a global color. So what we can do is we can just clear that from there. We'll reset that. And you see we still have the option for dynamic colors if we wanted to use those, if we can reference those, if it works. But what we can do is we can set this. And you can see there's our global colors, the 5 colors we've got, the 4 original colors and the one I've just created. I can set that to be the primary orange, and there we go. That's now been set to the primary orange color that I've got set up as part of my design as my global colors. We'll update that. And now if I come back into my global colors, now you do tend to find that with this, it doesn't always stick. Sometimes it kind of loses the color every now and again, but it is still the beta version, so it's expected to see some little quirks and so on. Okay, so what we can do is we can come back into our site settings, and from there we can come to our global colors. And if I wanted to, I can change this now to something else. Let me just copy that value from there so I don't lose it. And we'll change that to something completely different. There we go. We've now set that to blue. So anywhere that references that global color, if I make a change inside here, it will ripple throughout the entire site, whether that's pages, widgets, templates, or anything at all. So that's really quite cool. Let's come back up and set that back to the value that we want. Okay, so that's how the global colors work. So this is where you can quickly and easily wireframe your design, not worry about colors and fonts and stuff, just get the basic layout of how you want things to work, and then you can easily tweak those templates to make sure they fit in exactly the way you want with your branding, with your colors, with your typography, and all those kinds of super useful things. But now we've sort of taken a look at that. Let's move on to the next section, which is this area, which is basically my placeholder template for my headings 1 through 6, my body text, and anything else that we can globally style. So let's come back out of this, and we're going to go into the typography options and buttons and images and form fields and so on. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at global fonts. Now, global fonts work in a very similar fashion to global colors. We can click to open those up, and again, you can see we've got 4 global fonts: your primary, your secondary, your text, and your accent. Now, again, these are exactly the same as what you used to see inside the normal Elementor free version, and you could set global fonts inside there. So we can easily come in and style these any way we want, but we also have the option to add new styles in. So let's just say you had your basic styles for your primary, your secondary, your text, and your accent, but you wanted to create dedicated styling that you could edit at any point if you wanted to globally, and you wanted to use that for things like maybe pull quotes or quotations or, subheading sections, things that don't necessarily fall into just the 4 options you have, and you don't want to set them on a widget basis. Well, you could add a new style in. You can name that style anything you want. We'll just call this WPTuts. And you can edit all the normal typography options inside there. And then you can assign that in the same way we just saw assigning colors, and then you can globally edit that directly from inside the global fonts option. So again, it is one of those things as a quick time saver. We can get rid of this once we finish with it and say delete. Just bearing in mind, if you delete something that's being used on your site, it will immediately lose all those settings throughout your entire site. But you can see it is a really quick and easy way of being able to make absolute global changes to everything on your site. So what we can do is we can then come into our theme styles. Now, our theme styles is where we can set up and configure various aspects of what our theme is going to include: typography, buttons, images, and form fields, which is effectively what you can see on this template that I've pulled in, which, like I say, link is in the description if you want to download a copy of this to save yourself the time of actually creating one yourself. So let's open the typography options. Now, both typography and colors have the global option. So we can, if we want to, create unique fonts and typography settings, or we can reference the global settings. And again, we can create new global settings directly inside these drop downs for the colors and also for the fonts. So it's quick and easy to work with. So there's a lot of sort of combinations of ways of working. And let's just set some values inside here. So typography, we're going to click on there. We'll reset that so there's nothing being assigned. And if we wanted to, we could set this to be primary or text or whatever we wanted to. So you can say text, and you can see that it immediately changes it. We come back up, we say to accent. Nothing really happens because we haven't really configured much in there. Primary, again, nothing's really configured. So we are just kind of ending up with a bit of a lackluster kind of starting point. But let's just come in and change that over to something unique. So we'll say we want to change this to, let's just say, Poppins. We'll set that inside there, and then everything now will filter on through and choose Poppins. The text color, we can choose a global option on there. So let's just say we're going to choose this text option, and then that will pick up the color scheme from there. And if we change that on a global basis, all of our text that references that particular color will change, and it'll ripple on down through. Now, because we're setting this up through CSS, it's having that cascading effect. We're setting the body, and that's why just setting the body to a specific typography value, in this example, we're setting that to be Poppins. You can see all our headings, everything forms the lot. Anywhere that has text is picking that up because it's cascading down through everything. You don't have to work with that. You can easily come in and change the colors and the typography for your links, for your headings 1 through 6, so you can control all those. So let's just say we wanted to change the link color and we wanted to set a global value on there to be our orange color. There we go, we set that up. And now any links that are on our page will automatically pick up that orange color to be displaying as the link. Paragraph styles, we can adjust this so we can control how much space is between any of our paragraphs. You can work in pixels, ems, or VH values. And the thing worth bearing in mind is if you set your typography size inside here, that's the kind of the baseline size. So if you wanted to then work with ems or rems, those kinds of values, you could use those, and then the baseline value you'll be setting would come from your typography value. I don't want to get into that today because I think that's a topic in its own right, but you can do that if you want to. But what we are going to do is we're going to set the baseline value of 16 pixels because, well, that generally is the baseline value that most sites will use. And then, like I say, you can use percentages, you can use ems or rems, whatever you kind of want to work with then, moving on from there. Okay, so let's take a look at our H1, for example. Let's set a global color on there. We'll choose our primary orange and boom, there we go. Our heading now picks up the primary orange color. If I want to change the typography, I can do just that. So you could set that to Montserrat if I wanted to. Change the size on there to something like, say, 45. We can set the weight set that to 300, and there we go. We've now set that value. So we've created and used global values for the color and independent values for the typography setting itself for the H1. But you see nothing else has been affected. We can then just carry on through and make any styling options we want to the rest of our site. Once we've finished with our typography settings, we can come back from there. We can say we want to now control buttons, for example. So you can see we've got the normal, the hover state, the text shadow, typography. So again, we can reference global, or we can do unique values, all available to us inside here. Text for our buttons, for example, we don't want to have that orange. It doesn't make a lot of sense. So what we could do is we could click on there and we could add in a global color. So let's just say we're going to add a new global color and we're going to call this default white. And we'll set a value inside there of just standard white. So once we've done that, we can come back out of there, go back to our buttons, and we could say we're going to reference that now. Hasn't saved for some reason, and like I say, this is still a beta version, so bear that in mind. Let's go back to our global colors. Okay, we'll update that just to make sure we commit those changes. That's probably more my fault than anything else. Come back to our buttons and hopefully that color will be there. There we go, there's our default white. And you see that now picks that up, and we can, if we want to, then change our background color to anything. And again, we can come in and we can say we want to set that to our purple color. We want to set up any border values and so on. We can do that if we want to. We can change our typography. So we can come into our typography settings, and from there we could say we want to make this a heavier weight, or we want to capitalize it. See, now all our buttons pick up that styling. So this is where the whole global setting things that really does make the whole process of working with your site design way easier than you may have been working with before, because we can centralize all those different settings. So as I'm getting more used to this, more I'm testing it out, I can definitely see this is something that's going to be a real time saver. And if you use something like this basic styling sort of template that I've got, it just means you can quickly come in and set at least the baseline values, make sure everything works in relation to each other, your sizes for your different headings, the font weights and so on, the colors. And then you can just assign that throughout your entire site and use them where you want and customize things where you don't want to. Okay, so now that we've seen how we can work with some of these settings, let's take a look at how we can start tweaking the templates that we created, and then we can easily go in and adjust things globally should those color schemes not work the way we want. So we're going to come back out of this, and from here we're going to just publish that page. Doesn't really matter, it's just a temporary test page anyway. So let's come back out of this, go into our theme builder, and from here now we can just make sure that everything is assigned the way we want. So for example, let's come into our single post and we'll edit this. Just simply edit this page. Now obviously there's colors on here that don't work. So for example, this section at the top, let's just select that, come to our styles, and from there, let's get rid of this color and change this to our pale gray. Boom, there we go. That's now picked our pale gray. We can do is we can select this, we can right click and reset that style. And you see, because it's the H1, because we've reset it, that now just picks up the styling that we've assigned globally. So you can see it is incredibly quick and easy to do these kinds of things. Same with this text. We'll just simply come here, we'll reset that style. And you see that now picks up any styling. We're going to do the same for the typography. We'll just reset that. And, you know, you can still assign things on an individual basis or widget basis. So you can see we realistically want to have some extra spacing inside here. So let's just come to this section and we're going to come into advanced. And from there, we're going to come into our margins and padding and so on. We're just going to add something like 50 pixels of padding all around that. Okay, so we'll update that. Now you can see that where we've globally set up the spacing between the paragraphs, it's probably a little much. So what we can do now is we can come back in, we can come into our theme builder, sorry, our site settings, I should say. I will get that right at some point. Come back into our typography, and from there we can adjust our paragraph spacing to close that up to make sure everything looks the way we want it to. We can come into this and we can just change the weight on there, and you can see anywhere now that references any of this information is going to immediately be updated with any styling changes we make. So for example, if we don't like this header section at the top, we think it's a little bit too dark, for example, we can come back out of this, go back to our global colors, come into our pale gray, and we can adjust it. And you can see as we adjust it, the template adjusts accordingly, all those values adjust accordingly, and then we can hit update, and anywhere that uses that now will automatically be updated with the new information that we've just provided it through those global site settings. Now, let's just say that I want to create something a little more custom, and I still want to have that global control over it. Let's take, for example, this heading section for our date. Let's do that. Let's come out of this to go back into a template, because you can't currently be inside the theme stylings and global colors and so on and still edit and work with your templates or your actual content. So we have to still do a little bit of round tripping there, which is a little bit frustrating, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so let's just choose this section. Now at the moment, that's just set to date. And if we come to style, you can see we can set the text and so on inside there. And we've got global colors and typography and so on. So let's just reset everything on there. So we'll just reset that and reset style. So that just removes any style that's associated with it. Just make sure everything is clear off there. And same there. Okay. So now what we should be able to do if we update this page is we'll come back into our site settings, come back into our global fonts. From there, going to add a new style. So we're just going to call this custom post date. And then we're going to edit that. So we're going to change this font and everything completely. So we're going to go for something like Times New Roman, make it as ugly as we possibly can do. Set that to something like 15 pixels, and we'll set that to a heavy-ish weight. And we'll also adjust the letter spacing to something like, I don't know, 1.5. It doesn't really matter too much. So we've created and defined our custom post date style. So we'll update that to save those changes. We'll exit out of our site settings to go back to our template. And we'll select our template, come into text, and from there we're going to set our typography. But we're going to use the global value this time. So we're going to click on there, choose custom post date, and boom, there's our custom post date created and now assigned to this. So if we update this and we come back into our site settings, come back into our global fonts, and edit this to make it a little bit nicer looking. So we'll come back in and we'll say we want this to be Poppins, and we'll just change that over to be a lighter weight font. We'll adjust the line spacing or letter spacing back to normal. We'll transform that to uppercase, and we'll just maybe make it underlined and italic, just to chuck everything, including the kitchen sink, at it. We'll update that now. And that's now a custom post date, a custom global font. And we can assign custom colors to it as well if we wanted to. So we could easily come back out of this and we can assign any custom color we want. So our global colors, we may have something like this accent purple. We'll use that. We'll simply exit our site settings. And from there, we'll just select this again, come back down to our text, and we'll assign a global color to it. And we'll say we want accent. And there we go. So you can see the icon isn't picking it up, so we need to come to the icon and do the same thing there. So set our color, apply the accent to it there as well. But you can see that we can very easily start to use these global functions to create a very simple and streamlined way of working with our projects, setting the templates up and so on, and then going through and styling everything the way that we need to. So now it's just a case of refining the way things work. So we can come up to our header, for example, and obviously our navigation at the moment isn't styled and colored right, so we need to rectify that. We need to do, come to styles, and what we can do is typography. We can choose a global from there if we wanted to. Our text color, we can just come in and say we'll choose default white, and boom, there you go. Default white is selected. We can set the hover. We can change the color on there if we wanted to. So we could say the text color is going to be changed over to this pale gray. And when we mouse over, you can't really see too much of a difference, but you get the idea. The same with the drop down, we can style everything inside there, active, all those kinds of different things can all be controlled directly from within this section using those global colors. So hopefully what this has demonstrated is that the way that Elementor is moving forward with the ability to create themes, with the ability to set global colors, with these theme styles, it's giving you a platform for streamlining and speeding up the process of working with designing and building your sites. No longer do you have to keep round tripping to do so many different things. There's still room for improvement, and this is just really a brief overview of how things work and the whole point behind what they're doing as part of the Elementor 3.0 update. I'm still looking forward to seeing some of these bugs and little quirks being fixed, but I am kind of a little excited to see how everything is going to pan out moving forward, because I believe, and don't quote me on this, that version 3.1, when that's actually coming out, is going to have things like custom loops, custom breakpoints, and some of the things that a lot of people have been asking for a long time. So for me, I'm looking forward to 3.1 more than I'm looking forward to 3.0 release. But I think 3.0 is definitely pushing things in the right direction. But I'll be really excited to see how everything works and going through a really deep dive, in-depth tutorial to show you exactly how to build an entire theme using Elementor Pro 3.0 and Elementor and all the new features that it brings with it. Well, there you go, an overview of how global styling and the theme builder work to make your life designing and building sites with Elementor easier and much quicker. Now, as always, all of the applicable links are in the description below, and if you have any comments on anything I've covered, please feel free to leave those in the comments section. I'd love to get your feedback on what you think of Elementor Pro 3.0 and the free Elementor 3.0 releases in combination. As always, my name's been Paul C. This has been WPTuts, and until next time, take care.